Cambridge Five is a group of British Soviet spies who pulled off one of the most devastating betrayals in history. These five were smart, these five were charming, these five were destined for big things. Who knows, maybe knighthood and maybe even prime ministership. Soviet Union is there preaching communism as a kind of a universal world order, so to speak. Soviet recruiters are there everywhere. They're hanging around, they're looking for idealists that can be turned into spies. This escape shocks the West. The British press goes nuts. For the KGB, it was a masterstroke. It was a proof that they could outplay the West in spy games. Jai Guru and Namaste and welcome to Heartland Ari. It is time to share with you one of my favorite picks from the Cold War era of spies, their adventures and the shadowy world of espionage. This is about the United States, the United Kingdom and the West versus the Soviet Union and how they spent all those 45 years engaged in a deadly and silent game between themselves. Today's story is about the Cambridge Five. It is a group of Soviet spies, British Soviet spies, who pulled off one of the most devastating betrayals in history, infiltrating the heart of British intelligence and feeding secrets to the KGB for decades. We are talking of charm, we are talking of deception, and we are talking about a plot so bold that it shook the West to its core. And if you love spy stories, smash that like button. Let's get started. Go back to 1930 and picture what is happening then. The world is in a mess. There's this Great Depression there. Everyone's struggling. In the United States, back in Europe, fascism is on the rise. Germany and Italy have embraced fascism, and Soviet Union is there preaching communism as a an answer to all, as a kind of a universal world order, so to speak. Now, far off in England, there is the Cambridge University, one of Britain's most prestigious school, where the brightest minds are shaping up the future. Among them, there are five young men. There's Kim Philby, there's Maclean, there's Burgess, there's Anthony Blunt, and there's John Cairncross. These five are smart, these five are charming, these five are destined for big things, high-flying government careers, and who knows, maybe knighthood and maybe even prime ministership of Britain. But here's the catch. These guys are not loyal to Britain. And in time, they are about to pull off the KGB's greatest coup. How could this ever happen? Well, back in Cambridge, during the 1920s and the 1930s, the campus is buzzing with ideas. Needless to say, communism is one amongst the most potent one, and it's quickly gaining a lot of traction amongst naive students who see it as a way to fight inequality, to stop fascism, to usher in a new world order, and so on and so forth. The Soviet recruiters are there everywhere. They're called talent spotters. They are hanging about, they're hanging around, they're looking for idealists that can be turned into spies. And this is where enters Kim Philby, the golden boy of the group. He's charismatic, he's the son of a British diplomat, and he's got that knack for making friends. In 1934, a Soviet agent approaches him and Philby buys into the communist dream. Now, he's not in it for money, mind you. It is, as far as Philby is concerned, it's all about ideology. Philby quickly recruits his buddies, Maclean, Burgess, Blunt, Cairncross. And just like that, five of them are created and Cambridge Five is born. They swear allegiance to Moscow, they swear allegiance to Kremlin, they swear allegiance to KGB, and they're ready to betray their country for a cause. Now, Kim Philby has an India connect. He was born in Ambala in 1912. His real name was Harold Adrian Russell Philby. He was nicknamed Kim after, Rudyard Kipling's Kim, that famous spy character. So Philby was 22 years old when he was recruited by a Soviet contact. His nickname was Otto. In London's, this recruitment happened somewhere in London's Regent Park. Philby had married a communist member, a woman who he had met in Vienna, and she had arranged this initial meeting. Kim Philby, he began his career as a journalist. He was stationed in Vienna, from where he was covering the Spanish Civil War and the Battle of France. In 1940, he was recruited into into MI6 by his friend Guy Burgess. The crazy thing is that there was no background vetting. So all his it was not just Philby, it was Guy Burgess also. All their romance, college romance with communism, etc., was overlooked when these guys were recruited. So this was 30s. Fast forward to 1940s, and these guys are climbing the ladder of the British society very fast, like it's some kind of a snake and ladder game, and it's all ladders for them. Philby is already with MI6. Maclean is in the Foreign Office, heading top secret diplomacy. Burgess is then bouncing between BBC and MI6, always with a drink in his hand and always so many secrets of other people which he is ready to share and digest or to spill out. Blunt is an art expert and he joins MI5, which is the domestic intelligence, and he even goes to a position where he starts advising the royal family. As far as Cairncross is concerned, he is at Bletchley Park. He is cracking Nazi code during the Second World War. So by the mid-40s, these aren't your low-level operators. These aren't your low-level moles. They are now at the heart of Britain's power structure, trusted by everyone. So this was KGB hitting the jackpot. Now let's understand the damage that they did. The Cambridge Five were not just passing notes, they were handing the Soviet the keys to the West's secret. So during Second World War, they leaked British and American military plans, including code-breaking secrets from Bletchley Park. And that's huge. Imagine the Soviets, despite fighting on the same side of the war, knowing exactly where the Allies were decoding. After the war, as the Cold War began, Maclean was posted in Washington, leaking details about NATO's formation and America's nuclear program. Kim Philby was working in MI6's Soviet station, tipping off the KGB about Western operations, like defectors trying to escape the USSR. Western defectors, people in USSR working as Western agents, trying to defect the USSR. It was Kim Philby that was responsible for them getting caught by the KGB. What was one of their biggest wins? In 1949, they sabotaged Operation Valuable. It was a CIA/MI6 plan to send anti-communist guerrillas into Albania. The Soviet knew every move, and the mission was a total flop. I can cover Operation Valuable in another video. So for years, these guys are untouchable. They are not sneaking around like cat burglars, like breaking and entering and stealing a few diamonds and stuff. They're at fancy dinners, they're charming politicians, they're blending in absolutely perfectly. Philby is the star. He is so trusted, he is even considered for the top job at MI6. He was appointed the first secretary to the British Embassy in Washington in 1949. And I believe it was from there that he transmitted detailed information of MI6 and CIA, as well as about British plans for the Korean War, US and British plans for the Korean War. But no secrets last forever. So by 1950, the West starts suspecting that there is a leak. American code breakers working on something called the Venona project, they pick up hints of Soviet moles in the British ranks. Suspicion falls first on Maclean. Maclean was acting erratic. In 1951, Kim Philby gets a wind of this investigation. He warns Maclean. Maclean and Burgess escape to Moscow. They were the first one to escape. This escape shocks the West. The British press goes nuts. And somehow or the other, obviously, suspicion falls on Philby. Philby gets brought in for interrogation. But during the time he was interrogated, he was officially cleared and he managed to evade a full-scale incrimination. This stayed for over a decade. Now here comes the funny part. Why? Why did he manage to evade? Partly because of lack of hard evidence, but this is what most people think these days, including media, including analysts, specialists, everyone. Because many officials in the Foreign Office and Parliament refused to believe in the mounting evidence that was building against him. It's like, अरे ये नहीं हो सकता है. And that's a kind of a familiar feeling because probably we see a lot of it happening here too. So you've got a mountain of evidence, but you've got officials who are refusing to believe in them. If the evidence was true, there is another fact. If the evidence was true, if they had gone on and investigated, and if the evidence proved to be true, it would have proved to be a huge embarrassment to the US and to the British government. Obviously, they did not want that. So Philby was spared the first time round to prevent an international, UK and USA, institutional embarrassment. But Philby was smart. What he did was he resigned from MI6 in 1951 and he moved back into journalism again. He was sent to Beirut to cover for the Observer and the Economist. Some believe that he was still working undercover for the MI6. Whatever it was, whether MI6 was callous enough to have kept him as an undercover agent, or whether MI6 had, washed their hands off Kim Philby, whatever it was, he was still acting as a spy for the Soviet Union. So finally in 1962, so from 1930s to 1960s, like 3 decades, finally in 1962, suspicions over him were confirmed when he was implicated in evidence given by KGB defector Anatoly Golitsyn. There was a KGB defector that fled to the West, Anatoly Golitsyn. He gave the evidence against Kim Philby. But before anything could happen, Philby defects to Moscow. At this end, the Western end, Blunt gets exposed in 1964. But what he does is he cuts a deal to avoid jail, spilling what he knows. Cairncross, the last one, quietly slips away. His role, what was his role, was fully revealed a lot later. As far as the damage is concerned, catastrophic. Agents exposed by the Cambridge 5 were arrested or killed in the Soviet Union. Western operations in Eastern Europe were ruined. Trust between United States and Britain took a hit. The Americans were furious that their ally has been so leaky. For the KGB, it was a masterstroke. It was a proof that they could outplay the West in spy games. In 1968, Kim Philby published a book called My Silent War, which details his exploits, and in that book he defends his actions. Philby explained that his loyalties were with the communists and that he considered himself not as a double agent but as a straight penetration agent working in Soviet interest. He also divulged that during the 1940s and early 1950s, he had been responsible for the death of many Western agents who he thought had betrayed the Soviet Union. So, Heartlanders, this is the story of Cambridge 5, one of my favorite stories from Cold War, a tale of ideology, a tale of betrayal, a tale of a spy ring that rocked the Cold War. The KGB played the long game and they won big, but it came at a human cost. What I would like you guys to do is to leave a comment on what you think. Do you think that these guys were traitors? Do you think that these guys were idealists? Do you think that these guys were transactional? Also, let me know how you like the story, and you can suggest what is your favorite story from the Cold War era. Once again, if you've liked the story, hit that button, subscribe, and ring the bell for one more time. I've got stories from Albania operations and a lot more other interesting stories from the Cold War, which is coming up for you in the coming weeks. Next time, maybe we'll dig into a CIA comeback. Maybe we'll dig into a small MI6 victory. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Stay sharp. Jai Guru.